All right, we're going to start over. Mr. Clerk, we're reporting out of closed session. We have one item, 4.1, council closed session report number PDS 22-131, land matter 14483 Young Street. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion for the first item of council reporting out of closed session is to receive the report and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Someone like to move that? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gallo. Comments, questions? Court of vote.
Court of vote has been requested for the only item of council reporting out of closed session this evening. Councillor Humphreys, how do you vote? Councillor Humphreys votes yes. Councillor Kim? Councillor Kim was absent for the meeting. Councillor Thompson? Councillor Thompson votes yes. Councillor Gartner is not online. Actually, she is. Councillor Gartner, are you there?
Councillor Gardner.
Yes, I am. I vote yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallo? Councillor Gallo votes yes. Councillor Gilliland? Councillor Gilliland votes yes, and Mayor Maracus.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Confirming bylaw. Someone like to move that? Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Humphreys. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Thompson, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We're adjourned. Mr. Clerk, time is 7:04. I'm going to call this council meeting to order. Town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and Treaty Number 20 territories of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship that Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas, recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Thompson, any comments or questions? Seeing none, call the vote. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't see it on my screen. My vote is yes.
Thank you. That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. No community presentations. We have one delegation, 6.1, David Tomlinson, former resident, regarding motion 10.2. Mr. Tomlinson, welcome. Mr. Tomlinson, I'll just remind you have 5 minutes and the floor is yours.
Infrastructure short spell. My concerns are with the proposal of the next phase of the nature reserve, which is to carry out trails and berming, and most of it I agree with. The only concern I have is for what is known as the waded shorebird scrape. And this actually is an online pond, and basically the Conservation Authority is opposed to online pond, and I don't think the problem lies with you. I think the problem actually lies with the Conservation Authority. But online ponds are all over Aurora. Mackenzie Marshes are an online pond. Virtually every pond in Aurora is an online pond. And their argument is that you have to bypass these ponds for fish, cold water fish, for trout. Well, the chances of getting trout back in Aurora are absolutely remote, mainly due to pollution from runoff from the roads, which is now car tires. They've found that affects trout drastically, the wear and tear. So even if you do the online pond, it isn't going to solve the problem. And the other thing is, if we do build this regrading of the whole of shorebird scrape to store water, it's really silly. And there's already an online pond. It's a through pond through the next pond. There's already a drop board dam on the northern pond, which was built in the last 3 years. So why is it so important that we have to spend a vast sum of money to regrade the shorebird scrape, store water when it can be done for a fraction of the cost? And I have spoken to people I've spoken to engineers, consultants, conservationists, biologists, and no one can understand the logic of this because it just isn't going to work. It's going to cost the taxpayer thousands of dollars to do this. And I think what the town needs to do is go back to the Conservation Authority and explain to them that this is really stupid, that the best plan is to keep the wade escape as it is. It works perfectly well if they just replace the drop board dam and rebuild the dam and put the drop board dam back. And it'll be cheap, cheerful, and it works. And I've had up to 8 different species of shorebird came onto this area before the developers removed the dam to try and reduce the area of wetland. So basically, I don't want you to waste your money on something that is absolutely stupid, to put it bluntly. The Conservation Authority has to change its mind. And I know the problem isn't with the town, the problem is with the Conservation Authority. But I think you have to stand up to them and say, you know, if you want to do it, you pay for it, not the taxpayer of Aurora. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, David. Council, can I get a motion first to receive and refer? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Gallo, any comments or questions for our delegate? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through to Mr. Tomlinson. David, thank you very much for being here and expressing your concern.
Oh,
sorry,
David,
I did have a quick question.
Yeah, Councillor Thompson's got a question for you.
Thank you. You did briefly explain with in your remarks the concern that LSRCA has with regards to trouts, but is it just that, or is there more to the issue?
It is a perfectly sound policy to keep the trout, the streams in Ontario as cold water streams. And if it was out on the Oak Ridges Moraine, it makes absolute perfect sense. It's not the policy that's wrong. It's applying the policy to urban areas, which no matter what you do, we're not going to get trout back, mainly from pollution. We're not going to, whatever happens. So to me, the policy is good. The application in this case is the problem.
Councillor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. I know you've moved away from our wonderful town, so thank you very much for traveling back for this meeting. It must be very important to you. So if I can just understand, the Conservation Authority is concerned about cold water fish. And I believe we have blockages. I know Newmarket has one, that you're the same kind of mechanism that you're talking about. So I'm going to assume that you're correct about not being able to have any cold water fish in our streams. What do you estimate the cost would be to follow the Conservation Authority's suggestion, and what kind of savings would we look at if we follow what you believe to be the right way to proceed?
Mr. Thompson.
I've seen the drawings prepared by the engineer, and what they're basically doing is part of the problem is it's an intermittent stream. The shorebird scrape, it used to fill with the dropboard dam, block the water flow. It filled with water in the spring in runoff. And because it was an intermittent stream, the flow gradually declines, the water evaporates, and it's exposed mud. And mud is the food of shorebirds. And thousands of them fly over Aurora because we're on a fly route, but there's nowhere for them to stop. They virtually have to fly from the Arctic to Lake Ontario before they can feed. And Aurora was a big stopping point. And there were many, many, many shorebirds, up to, I think I've recorded up to 8 species. Now, what they want to do now is divide the shorebird in half. Half of it, they're going to build up berms to store water, and the other half they're going to put another water control in, which is going to be really extravagant and is very, very difficult for volunteers to operate. Whereas the drop board dam, if the pond's too full, all you do is remove a board and the level drops to the level of the next board. So it makes it very easy to make sure the water levels are perfect. If the water levels are getting too dry, you put it back and you have stored water. And that's another problem. You have to think about where we can store water. And that could be done at the extreme southern end of the nature reserve, where there's a long valley. So we could put a temporary pond in there with a board again, and that would store. So it could be done very reasonably. If you're going to excavate, regrade it all, and there's no guarantee at the end of the day that this will even work. It's assumed it will by the engineers. So how much that would cost, I think you'll find out when you get the estimate from the consultant, but I think it's not going to be cheap by any means. And it's totally unnecessary because they've already built a drop board dam on the next pond down. So what's the point? It doesn't make sense.
Councillor?
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. The drop board is we already have one in Aurora, and I believe Newmarket has one. So we've already eliminated the possibility, apart from what you've just said, for cold water fishery. Do you have an idea how much the drop board program would cost Aurora if we did that?
The original dam, the original drop board, all it needs is, what happened is the developers, when they bought the land, broke the dam, broke the berm dam to let the water through and took away, destroyed the drop board dam so that it would constantly drain, which they thought would reduce the area of wetland, which in the end would increase the amount of buildable land. That was the theory. Didn't work, but that was the theory. So it would be only a relatively small amount of money to replace the dam and the drop board dam, because don't be fooled into doing an elaborate drop board dam. It just needs the one replaced, which was a farm dam for cattle, basically. It doesn't need a massive engineering project. It's a very simple process.
Councillor?
Thank you. So I guess the bottom line, it would be much cheaper, easier to maintain, I'm guessing. And it just doesn't make sense to do it.
It doesn't make it. I have discussed this with many people, and I have yet to find one who supports the drop board, the theory of getting rid of the drop board and bypass stream. It is totally illogical. Yeah.
Councillor?
Again, thank you for coming from such a distance to be with us tonight to express your concerns.
I've enjoyed the drive.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys?
I didn't drive it, a friend drove me. It's really good.
Nice to see you anyway.
Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And actually, Mr. David, you've been very clear. So thankful you're here tonight with your expertise. Looking forward to have this on the discussion later on the agenda, to ask staff to refer back and go to the others, and just make sure that we get some clarity and some facts. So really appreciate it. And it's always good to see you and your passion. We miss you. So thank you. Keep coming back. Okay. Please.
If the Conservation Authority still insist that they should do it, then I think they should pay for it.
Absolutely.
Not the public in Aurora. If they want it, they should pay for it. Simple as that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for coming and chatting with us today about this. I think it opens our eyes a little bit about, some of the logistics of how things work, and obviously for the best value of our taxpayer dollars, but also just the whole point of what we're trying to achieve here. So it does sound like it does make sense. Question, when you say you talk to some engineers and a whole bunch of other people, could you be a little bit more specific about that, just for resource sake?
Yeah,
when you say you've spoken to engineers and other people that don't support the idea of what they're being presented by the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority, could you be specific as to who these other people are, or the engineers? Like, are they people who are in the community of specifically building these things? I just kind of want some context.
Okay, Mr. Thompson?
I have spoken informally to many members of town staff.
Can you speak in here? Sorry.
I have spoken informally to many members of town staff, and basically they agree with me, but they say our hands are tied because we have to implement their policy, which I can understand. I've spoken to consulting engineers, same thing. That the professionals say, we agree with the David 100%, but our hands are tied. The Conservation Authority, we have to carry out their policies. So it's basically, the problem isn't the town. I've spoken to many consultants, environmental consultants and biologists who I know, I'm very friendly with a lot of them, and every one of them just shakes their head with wonder and said, they're never going to get the trout back, David. I said, no, they're not. They know, but they're all high professional. It's not like my next door neighbor. I've discussed it. I know a lot of professional people, and I speak their language. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And for context, I just wanted to understand that. So that's great. Another quick question. Have you had the opportunity to speak with the Lake Simcoe Conservation Board and had the opportunity to express some of the concerns or views?
No,
Thomas?
I'm not conventional, but I do think you should follow the route. And at the moment, it's the town that, now, if they wanted me to speak to the Conservation Authority, I'm quite happy to do that. But I don't want to go above the town's head. And, I want it to follow a logical route, which it will follow. Yeah. So that the reason is, no, I haven't spoken to them. I mean, I've mentioned it to them informally when I've been at meetings with them, but I've never discussed it formally with them, no.
Councillor?
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. Just knowing that we can obviously have your support if, we pass this tonight and we have those discussions with the board, then, perhaps we can also lean on you and your expertise and, some of the people in your background could contribute to that, the commenting. And I did like what you said about, the policy is great. It's just the application doesn't necessarily fit. And I think those are the key takeaway words. So thanks so much.
Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Thank you, David, for coming this distance and presenting tonight. I think I just wanted to confirm two things with you. The first one, above anything else, is it fair to say that the major issue is consistency with Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority, because there's virtually an identical application in this case. And in the North Pond, I don't know if that's what it's called, but North Pond, we have a similar situation where Lake Simcoe approved what you're suggesting we do on the South Pond. So to me, the get-go is inconsistency in application of the policy. And the second, the reason why this was necessary for me to put forward, and I'm looking to you for also some advice, is, as you just mentioned, in terms of process, if staff received back the estimate to build this as per the drawings, as per Lake Simcoe's request, and it fit within the town's budget that we approved, they would go ahead with it because they have no other reason not to proceed. Doing this going forward, in your advice and guidance, gives staff an open door to re-explore this and to a certain degree challenge Lake Simcoe and to try to get this right. Is that fair to say?
That is the crux. Yeah, that is what needs to be done. I mean, the next, there are a line of ponds go through. There's already to the north by the community centre. There's a little pond there, Dropboard Dam. That's to the north, to the south. Sorry, to the south. There's a Dropboard Dam there. It flows through what would be the shorebird scrape, goes into the central pond. It's a through stream going through that again. Then it goes into the northern pond and another dropboard dam. So there's dropboard dams to the north of it. There's dropboard dams to the south of it. Then a bit further on, you've got Fairy Lake, which is a huge dam. And none of those, they're not proposing any of those should be removed. What is the logic of saying, well, this one shorebird scrape should be a bypass stream and no dropboard dam with a very complicated water control on it? It just is illogical.
Council?
Thank you. And just to be also clear in terms of the motion tonight, you've spoken to staff and perhaps informally they've agreed with this. I've spoken to staff and had meetings. They helped draft what's before us. So it's consistent and quite frankly supportive of staff to move forward with this.
I think if it was left to, if the Conservation Authority wasn't involved, it wouldn't even be a problem. Staff would automatically put the drop board dam in and just reinstate the shorebirds. I mean, it exists. What's the point of, redesigning something that works perfectly all right, with just a few boards in it? Yeah.
Counselor?
Thank you. That was it. Thanks, David.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Tomlinson, thank you very much for coming this evening. We always appreciate your passion. And as Councillor Gardner mentioned, thanks for making the trip back down to Aurora. Council, call the vote. Councillor Gardner? You're on mute, Councillor?
I don't know why the vote prompt isn't showing up on my screen. Perhaps staff can do something about that. I vote yes.
Thank you. That carries. Council moves to consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve items 7.1 to 7.8 inclusive? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Thompson, any comments or questions on any of those items? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Just on 7.7 on the corporate environmental action plan, the progress report. I just want to draw a little bit of attention to that. Thank staff, because I think this is an absolutely fabulous report to show all the achievements that we have done toward meeting our goals and climate action goals, energy, climate sustainability. I just want to say thank you very much for that. Any quick comments, Mr. Contarin, that you would like to kind of point out? Give you the floor about some of the accomplishments that have been achieved and some things that we're looking for in the brighter future of the direction of our town.
Contarin.
Thank you, Councillor, through the chair. At this point, I don't have any comment on further successes, but we are working on a lot of new developments for next year and within our 10-year capital plan, one of them including local improvement charge program that will hopefully be in fruition within the next couple of years. But as Councillor Gilliland stated, there has been a lot of success, especially over the pandemic. Since I first arrived here of this year, I was really impressed of what town staff has done across all departments. So I just wanted to say congratulations again. And we promise to keep up the great success.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much. And I'm really grateful for your department and your service and everything that you guys have accomplished. We are so lucky and we are ahead of a lot of other municipalities for having your expertise in our town to guide us forward, much more forward thinking. Some other municipalities I know, just having sat in some of the climate caucuses, I'm often reaching out on, how they too can move forward at the same pace that we are. So I just kind of want to give you that congratulations, and I look forward to the continued work that your department is going to serve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions on any of those items? Call the vote. Councillor Gardner.
My vote is yes.
Thank you. That carries. Move to number 8, standing committee reports. Are there any items anyone wants pulled? Okay, a motion to approve all items in the standing committee reports. Councillor Gilliland, second. Councillor Thompson. Call the vote. Councillor Gardner.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That carries. Council, would you like to move 10.2 forward? Thank you. So we'll start with 10.2. Councillor Gallo, this is your motion. David Thompson, Nature Reserve Design. Would you like to move your motion? Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Gallo, floor is yours.
Sorry, I'm just finding it. Jeez. Here we go. So the whereas is, I won't go through all of those. I think we went through most of them in David's presentation. I'll just read the now therefore be it hereby resolved that staff report to council at its earliest convenience regarding options for the design of the phase 2 wetland components and costs more in line with David Tomlinson's original design intent for the nature reserve. The first thing in terms of why I put this motion before us, the last meeting is it's somewhat time sensitive, as I mentioned before. If staff were to receive the estimates for this project and it was within budget, they would have no reason not to proceed because we've given them authority to proceed, and provided it was within budget, they would proceed. So this is an attempt to open a door for staff to reevaluate the necessity for this and whether or not we can achieve something that is much more cost effective and is consistent with what's already been done in the past and approved by Lake Simcoe. So that's kind of why I put this before us at this time, because of the sensitive timing of it and to give staff an opportunity to revisit it. To also be clear, I had a meeting with staff, with Sarah and Gary and Mel to discuss this and try to figure out what the best approach should be. And they've reviewed this motion and made some corrections, which I did. And I don't want to put words in their mouth, but based on that, I believe they're supportive of it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Opening up the door for them to have a more thorough discussion and see if there's a better way to do this.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Kim, I was just about to call the vote. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given that Councillor Gardner is our representative on the LSRCA, I'm just wondering whether she had the opportunity to contact the conservation about this topic and whether they had any comments to make.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. The Conservation Authority is very firm on this policy and putting this policy in place in Aurora. There have been many discussions about it, and we at council have heard that they are unwilling to change the policy. It's going back now several years. So no, this is their policy, and unless we can provide a good argument why we want to do something else. And in fact, as Mr. Tomlinson said, this should be a council discussion, and we should decide what is better, more cost effective, less maintenance, and then put it forward to the Conservation Authority as a council. Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you. To you, Mr. Mayor, again, to Councillor Gardner, did they indicate why they're so staunch on this policy?
Councillor Gardner?
Well, I'm not sure if you were on council, but we have heard it before. As Mr. Tomlinson said, he's had many discussions. They hold their position, And no, I have no idea why, because it just doesn't make sense. And it certainly doesn't make sense for the taxpayers of Aurora. Thank you.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you. I was on council, and from what I recall, they did give several reasons to be a proponent of online ponds. And I do recall that they talked about the drying up of the area, and I can't remember all the reasons, but I do remember that they had several reasons. And at the same time, for me, it was a very heavy vote because Mr. Tomlinson had valid arguments as well. For myself, I'm hesitant to put in such an important vote when we don't hear relevant information and current information from both sides of the table. And I think, and I know council have in the past said the same thing, that when you have one side, it gets pretty one-sided. So to be able to have a fresh perspective, my preference is to defer this vote to a future council where the LSRCA representative has the opportunity to provide their perspective, so we know the whys. I'd like to put that motion in now, but I think there's a couple of other people
Yeah,
that like to
Councillor,
weigh in.
I'll wait. Yes, some of your colleagues still want to speak, so I'll give them the opportunity to speak, and then I'll come back to you if you still want to do that at that time.
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. I guess a question through Mr. Mayor to staff. Has staff had any direct conversations recently to Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority? I know boards do change and things evolve. I don't know who would like to take that question.
Mr. Colangelo, I told you I'd get you in right away.
Is that working? Okay.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, none that I'm aware of.
Councillor?
Thank you. And so with this motion here, is there any understanding or direction that you would be working with this Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority with these options that are presented today to come to some sort of agreement, or is that not direction there?
Mr. Colangelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll be happy to take that question to staff to provide a response.
Councillor?
Okay, another question then. I mean, we haven't, through Mr. Mayor to staff, we haven't had conversations with Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority. However, we did hear Councillor Gallows speak about consistency. Were you aware of some of the inconsistencies that maybe were being presented in other municipalities where it has been approved? I know this is a big question for you, but I'll let you answer.
Through
Colangelo?
through you, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, I was not part of that discussion. And the people that would know those answers can provide that answer for you maybe tomorrow or Thursday.
Councillor?
Thank you. I guess through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Gartner, I'm going to ask you the same question to Councillor Gallows' point. This north and south pond, I'm not really familiar with, but apparently there was some inconsistencies on that approval. So do you know what's different and why that approval is happening now and ours is not? Is it just because time's passed, maybe boards change, maybe different circumstance? I'm just a little confused.
Actually, I have no idea. I wasn't aware of these others. And if they're put in place, I have no idea what the reasons are. But the main reason for not putting them in Aurora was to promote the cold water fishery. And if they're in place also in Aurora already, in other places, then it's really a moot point. We can't have a cold water fishery.
Councillor?
Thank you. I guess my final comments then are, it seems that whatever plan that we're originally going forward doesn't make really viable sense just based on some of the comments from staff support, as per Mr. Tomlinson's comments, supporting the cause of the fact that it's not cost effective and the plan doesn't work effectively. And I feel like some sort of communication piece has to occur with the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority. I don't know how long ago this pushback was from the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority, but it sounds like it was many, many years ago. So I suspect that maybe with certain circumstances, they'd be willing to listen. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess maybe to Councillor Gallo, with this motion that you had intended, did you intend for town staff to have working conversations with the Conservation Authority to perhaps maybe realign that policy to fit the application as Mr. Tomlinson's expressing, so it would make sense to go forward with this design that we are proposing today?
Councillor Gallo?
Absolutely. I can't imagine staff not generating a report, not having contacted the Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority and provide, the arguments that David has clearly provided, and the consistency. There already is one that they approved just north of this. It's inconsistent. And yes, absolutely, they should be contacting Lake Simcoe and coming to a consensus.
Councillor?
Thank you. Okay, that sounds great. And just reading by the resolution, that staff report back to council earliest convenience regarding options. So I'm gathering that's just maybe through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff. Is that, and I know I've asked you this already, but just hearing what Councillor Gallo has had to say in this open discussion, does that give you that direction that you feel that with this resolution that would really trigger you having these conversations with the Conservation Authority to address the application of this policy then?
Mr. Colangelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if council wishes a report, staff will provide council a report.
Councillor?
Thank you. Well, I think that would be rather important to have that open conversation, because clearly some change needs to be made in consistency to Councillor Gallo's point. So I would be very much in support of moving forward with something that's more cost effective, but also that makes more sense for the actual application of the area. Why would we be doing something that's not going to work? Clearly doesn't make sense. So I'm certain there's probably going to be a new board in the next term. So it's not going to happen overnight. If we pass this, they're going to have this conversation with the new board. And I think that's important. So I'm in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I'm supportive of revisiting the conversation. The last report we had was in 2019. And in that report, it spoke specifically around the Conservation Authority's policies prohibiting the creation of online ponds. And that was the driver for the decision at the time in 2019. I certainly appreciate Mr. Tomlinson's comments and certainly he makes sense. But I would also like to afford the Conservation Authority an opportunity to be able to speak to their concerns and or rationale for their policies around the prohibition to online ponds. But, can that be done in advance of the report being produced or at the same time? I'm open to either. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Colangelo. Luigi, do you have a sense of, how much work would be involved in creating the report that Councillor Gallo was asking and bringing it to council? Is it a relatively simple task or is there a fair bit involved?
Mr. Colangelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe it's a difficult task, and staff will talk to Conservation Authority and provide council with options.
Councillor?
Thank you. And listen, if it's a simple task, I'm okay with it. I think what I would ask is for consideration is that, if Mr. Tomlinson is willing to come back at that time when the report is presented and or extend an invitation to Lake Simcoe to delegate that night so that they can be part of the conversation as well. So we can have some thorough discussion around it and make a final decision on how best to proceed.
You. Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's all been said. I think we all agree that we have to have the Lake Simcoe Region Authority be able to input with staff's opinion. I think some of the great information from Mr. Thomas this evening will be able to, understand where we should go on the right approach for sure. So I believe that we're heading in the right direction. If, as to Mr. Mayor, Mr. Colangelo mentioned that if we can have the discussion before hand with the report with the Conservation Authority, we should be in good shape, right?
Colangelo?
Through you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo, second time?
Thank you. And I just, in case it was missed, I want to underline that not only did I have a meeting with staff, Sarah and Gary, and a thorough discussion with them on various options. A lot of what you see before you is based on what we discussed in that meeting, and they did review this. In fact, made some changes, and I adopted those changes so that they would be on board to proceed in this way. And just to hopefully appease Councillor Kim, I don't see this happening without a conversation with Lake Simcoe. I'm not suggesting it's going to be an easy conversation. I'm not suggesting that they're going to roll over. But if we're interested in consistency and saving money, then there's no reason why either staff or council, this one or the next one, can push back and say, you know, this pretty much what David said. If you want that, then you pay for it. There's no reason for the taxpayers in this town to pay for something that's identical to something that you already approved just up the way. So it just doesn't make sense. And I would completely agree that a conversation has to be had with Lake Simcoe. And again, we might be at odds, and it'll be up to the next council to determine whether they want to push or not hard enough, or just proceed. But this opens the door for that. Without this, staff have no authority to do anything other than proceed as long as it follows the budget constraints, and they would go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Colangelo, just so everyone has a full understanding, I just want to make sure reporting back to council at its earliest convenience, that means next term, correct?
Understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kim, did you still want to put forward something, or did you?
Yes, like to comment and then put forward.
Floor is yours.
Can you confirm, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Colangelo, LSRCA they can't force us to implement the online ponds, right? It does sound like in certain contexts that they can make us go in one direction. Is that correct or no?
Mr. Colangelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, from what I was briefed briefly today, the LSRCA are not in favor of online ponds. They're in favor of offline ponds.
Councilor?
Yes, but the question was, can they force us to go online ponds if we choose not to go in that direction?
Offline.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that question.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate that I'm very respectful of Mr. Tomlinson, his knowledge and his advice to us as a town. I'm very grateful to it. And I'm supportive of all his arguments. My point is just that when we only hear one side and we need a kind of refresher on the other side, it's just hard to make such an important decision, is all that I'm saying. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Colangelo, if we were to make a decision now to consider offline ponds that are in line with Mr. Tomlinson's vision, when would the works commence?
Mr. Colangelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would all depend on conservation giving us authority to do so
Councilor?
and timelines.
Okay, so I guess.
Councilor, I'm going to have our CAO wants to weigh in.
Okay.
I'll let him weigh in. CAO?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, and I think sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, and just to clarify with through Councillor Gallo as well. So I believe the direction of this motion is for staff to go back, talk to LRSCA, which for all intents and purposes means we're obviously not going to move ahead with construction because we've been told to go back to the Conservation Authority. So nothing would happen. There would be no construction that would start on those ponds until we came back to this council. And whether it's a status quo or a suite of options, including we could include an opinion, if you like, as to how much authority the Conservation Authority has to inflict this on us, or the ramifications of not following their recommendation. Let's put it that way. We could include all that as part of a report. So I believe that's what Councillor Gallo was asking for. And so, for all intents and purposes, construction would, we wouldn't go ahead with it as long as that's outstanding with council.
Councilor?
Okay, thank you. But I don't see anywhere in the instructions in the motion that staff consult the LSRCA. So is that implied that's going to be
I
part
think,
of the
I think
process?
it was discussed, Counselor, and I think some of the answers that came back is that it's implied in that for staff to create a report, they would have some discussions with
Okay.
Lakeson.
Okay, that's fine. If that's the case, then I'd be in favor of the motion as is.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, yeah, just before I call the vote, I agree. I mean, I think it's as simple as was mentioned, it's a simple report we heard from staff that they'll be able to bring back. And I think at that time, when they bring back that report, Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority can attend that meeting and we can hear from them at that point in time. And then the council of the day can make that final decision. So call the vote. Councilor Gardner?
I vote yes.
Thank you. That carries. What's wrong? Yeah. Council, we need a 5-minute recess. The computer's frozen. Our clerk's computer's frozen, so none of the mics will be able to turn on. So 5-minute recess while this is booting back up. All right, we're back. Councillor Gallo, 10.1, armory lease restart. Would you like to move your motion? Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Gallo, floor is yours.
Whereas is on this one, just to, they're not long. Whereas at the July 12th, 2022 council closed session meeting, council deliberated and made a decision regarding 4.2 council closed session report number CAO 22-003 armory lease restart. And whereas all of council has continuously proclaimed a culture of openness and transparency with the public, and whereas the financial implications of the decision taken by council on July 12th, 2022 regarding armory lease restart will be documented and recorded publicly in future reports and financial statements. And whereas it is important to communicate how council spends tax dollars and the details in which council used to make those decisions. Now, therefore, be it hereby resolved that the full details and all staff reports regarding armory lease restart be released to the public 1 week after the passing of this motion. I'm happy to hear from staff, and if it takes more time to accomplish that, I have no issues with that. It's not necessarily urgent, but I do believe that information should be made public.
CO, on timing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we would just want an appropriate amount of time to pass the report by the college, so they had a heads up as to what was being published. But there is a clause in the original lease, so not in that report or not in the amendment, that speaks to keeping the details of lease agreements confidential. I did have a very preliminary discussion with the dean a couple of weeks ago when I knew of this motion, and he, on the face of it, didn't think there would be an issue, but obviously he's not in a position to make that call on his own. So we would just need some time for me to consult with the college and make sure they're fine.
Councillor.
I have no problems with that, whatever time it takes to accomplish that and do it properly.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'm in support of the motion. You know, as we did in 2017 in December, we released the details of the lease at that time. I'm fine for that report to get re-released, and it's certainly available on the town's website, but I don't know how easy it is to retrieve it from 2017. But if it helps the situation, that too can be included in terms of that report that was on to the public back then. I think my only concern, and our CAO addressed it, had to do with the consent of the college. I am aware of the confidentiality clause, and so my one question through you to Mrs. Desario is in speaking to the point that the CAO made. Do we require consent?
Mrs. Desario.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there is a clause in the lease agreement that says that in order for anything to be released, or the agreement to be released, or any of the information contained, that you do need the express written consent of both parties.
Thank you.
Councillor.
You know, I don't anticipate that to be an issue at all. Again, they gave it in 2017. If you go back to that report, it talks about all the lease terms. It talks about all the financial aspects of it. I'm sure they'll be quite fine to do it again, but I just think it's one of those checks that needs to be done with regards to the release of it. But I'm in support of the motion. And I think just if it helps to answer any outstanding questions that are out there, to include that which came in 2017 as well.
Councillor Gilliland, then Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. CAO. With this resolution before us, would that also include any other staff reports that we had that might need more updating? I know that, we did have some reports that, we did review that were, obviously more confidential, that we had some, I'm going to say, not the most accurate information that has been rectified, but not necessarily formally in a report. Would that be something that we would have revised for the purpose of this motion before us?
CO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure when you say other reports, certainly this report, this motion speaks to the Armory lease restart report, which was the one presented to council in July. And we did identify then verbally that some of the charts weren't correctly displayed. The essence of the final position was fine, but some of the charts were not lining up. So we would issue a sort of a red line version of that as well, and with an explanation as to why those charts were changed. But it would be for clarity only, and it doesn't change anything that was presented in closed session. And we
Counselor,
would, sorry, excuse me, sorry, Mr. Mayor, we would also have to clarify that with the college as well. I didn't get into that amount of detail with the college.
Counselor,
Thank you. That's good enough clarity for me. And as just for language terms, including the amendment to the agreement is what would be part of that report, correct?
Mr.
Through Mr. Mayor, that's all that report was spoke to is a lease amendment. Yes.
Thank you.
Counselor. Counselor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember when we discussed this, the first lease or the main lease in closed session, we released it to the public. I don't remember consulting the Armory, but certainly it was released to the public. And I can't imagine why we couldn't release this one if we have already set precedent.
Counselor Gardner, I'm going to ask Mr. Sale's got an answer for that. Mr. Sale.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So originally, when this first came to council in closed session, the issue of confidentiality was raised because the college was doing some other things in some of their other campuses, and they didn't wish to confuse the media with reports of this potential partnership and some of the things they were doing at the time. So at the time, that was one of the concerns council raised, if I recall correctly, and wanted to make sure that if council was agreeable to doing the partnership as laid out initially, one of the council's conditions at the time were that it would all be made public once the agreement had been reached. And that did happen. So you may recall, Councillor, that at that time, we recessed the closed session. We had a regular council session. I went back to the college and had a discussion with them and negotiated further as per the instruction I was given by council at the time. And it was agreed then that they would allow, once the deal was completed, they would allow the details of the deal to be public, which we subsequently did about, I think, 6 weeks later or something like that in December when the college was here for the public announcement. That report that accompanied that public announcement included those financial details that council had asked for. So again, that was prearranged with the college in terms of the timing and how that would come out. But yes, they did agree to it.
Counselor.
Thank you. And that was the basis on which I voted for that, with the college. I certainly think that the public deserves to know any financial matters that could affect them. And I think that this absolutely has to be done.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Gallo, second time.
I'm happy to change the resolution if I could maybe get some direction from staff in terms of what they think the timing could be.
We were just discussing
Okay.
what it should be, so Ms. Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, either removing everything after public to make it open-ended, or maybe changing week to month. So you have a month's time. I'd look to the CAO to understand if that's realistic.
CL, do you want
See,
to?
Mr. Mayor, if it's acceptable to Councillor Gallo, it's something along the lines of a couple of weeks after the college, after we get consent from the college. Like, I just don't know what their process is. I don't know if they want to, their solicitor look at it or something, and that person's gone for a week. So month should be lots. I'm not trying to delay it. It should be lots, but I can't speak to what their process would be. And I only had the sort of hypothetical discussion with the dean at the time about this motion coming. So.
How about release to the public after Niagara College?
After having obtained the consent of Niagara College.
After obtaining the consent of Niagara College, how about like that?
Written
consent.
Written consent.
I'm okay. I just, as long as we feel it's not going to be prolonged, months and months.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
You want to just reword that, and then if Councillor Gallo is okay? Okay, Councillor Humphreys, did you want to speak while we wait for this?
Just-
Okay, sorry, Councillor Gallo, did you have anything else for a second? Okay, Councillor Humphreys, go ahead.
That comment, I mean, I appreciate the motion but I'm not concerned about this being a public document once we have alignment from college. I'm very comfortable. It was done in 2017. I'm looking forward to getting out of those little mystery questions out in the public again. There's nothing to hide. So I'm looking forward to getting that out there and getting it completed once and for all. So looking forward to that. Thanks.
Councillor Garner, did you still have your hand up or did you want to speak a second time?
My apology, I'll put it down.
Oh, thank you. Just want to make sure. Be released to the public after attaining the written consent of Niagara College. Councillor Gallo, good? Councillor Gilliland, you second, you're fine? Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I think it's great. Call the vote. Councillor Garner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I consider that I can't vote on my screen, perhaps a punishment for not being at council in person, but I vote yes.
Thank you. It carries. Councillor Gallo, third one, cannabis retail stores in Aurora. Would you like to move your motion? Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Gallo, floor is yours.
I'll spare everyone. I won't read all of these whereas it's a public agenda. The gist of it is I'm just looking for an update for the public. And the reason I put it on, albeit not urgent, but the reason I put it on because, you know, knocking on doors and speaking to many people in the last few months, that it's something that's popped up continuously in my discussions. So I think it's incumbent upon us to just give a status report on well, I'll read the whereases though. Sorry, therefore. So now, therefore, be it hereby resolved that staff report back to council at its earliest convenience and include in a report, but not limited to, A, the number of retail cannabis stores in Aurora, B, a full financial accounting of what the town received directly or indirectly as a result of opting in, and C, all correspondence issued by staff to the AGCO after receiving notice of a new cannabis retail store in Aurora. Just kind of and I'm open to any additions to that if someone feels like there's something missing that should be added that the public would find helpful.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I am in support of the motion. I'm fine. You know, fortunately, some of this information is available publicly. You can just go to the AGCO. It'll tell you how many outlets there are. There are currently 11 in Aurora with another one pending for Bayview Avenue. In terms of the financial report, that's the fund that we receive money from, it's there as well. It's $78,000 to date, but I don't know if that's, you know, the full amount directly and indirectly. And so I think a report from staff would be good to be able to further clarify any additional monies that may have been received. I think my only question related to Councillor Gallo really revolves around the C component and his request for all correspondence issued by staff. I don't know how much back and forth there is with the AGCO with regards to these applications. I certainly think that whatever the final submission from the town is to the AGCO with regards to any individual application expressing our concerns or thoughts on it should definitely be a matter of public interest, but I just don't know to what degree he's looking for. So I was hoping perhaps he could just shed some light. Is he fine with whatever that final submission is from the town, or is he looking for all correspondence, including emails back and forth between the town and the AGCO?
Councillor Gallo.
I'm looking for the final reports from staff. Similar, we've received some of them, but it stopped for some reason. Maybe there wasn't any more. I'm looking for those basically so that we can publicly say, you know, we were against some of them because it didn't fit the criteria, yet they went ahead anyway. I think that's important knowledge that the public should have, that we did our job. We communicated what we had to communicate. So that level of detail is more than enough.
I think it's important to have that final letter or expression of interest with regards to back to the AGCO. I know that in the discussions we had in the bylaw that this council passed, we added additional criteria that we wanted the AGCO to concern them, so to consider when evaluating these applications beyond just the legislative requirement of the 150 meters to a school. To the best of my knowledge, the AGCO has not considered any of those additional requirements that we've put in, but I think it would be good to be able to have those letters as a matter of public record so that we can, have those conversations with the residents, say we're trying our best, but the AGCO isn't necessarily listening to our concerns.
Okay. Councillor Gardner, just before I go to you, Councillor Gallo, are you okay if we do foresee all written submissions by staff to the AGCO, just to clean up the language a little bit? Is that good? Okay. Councillor Gillette? I'm going to go to Councillor Gardner. I just said I was going to, if we can clean up that one thing on C, written submissions as a friendly amendment, just for, okay. Thank you. Councillor Gardner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to thank Councillor Gallo for bringing this forward. I think it's very important. And I do think it's important for the residents, the taxpayers. Thank you very much, Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Is this on? Thank
One second.
It's on?
There it is.
Okay. Some of the concerns with the number of cannabis stores has been of concern. I've heard that as well, not just in your ward, but I've heard it in my ward as well. And comments too, just about the proximity of how they are to another cannabis store. And for some reason, I recall at the time when we had passed it, there was rules about how close it could be to one store because it didn't want to have a border of Aurora, have all the stores on the border because Richmond Hill didn't approve it or something or other. I'd be curious as to whether or not those rules have changed over time. And I don't know if through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, like you have or have access to any kind of legislative changes that they make to that from when we last approved it in January 2019. I just feel like, they have the purview to do so, but we're not really privy to what they are. I guess it's just a quick question.
Yeah, I'll go to Mr. Sarah, but I don't believe that they changed any legislation other than the lottery system that they were giving out the licenses to. But Mr. Serio, if you wanted to add to that.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just for clarification. So it was not a legislative requirement that the cannabis retail stores not be beside each other. The only legislative requirement was that the cannabis stores not be beside schools. As a council, you all decided to do an extra requirement that they not be beside each other, but it's a requirement that AGCO does not have to follow if they choose not to.
Great. That's kind of what I thought in that regard as far as the following, but for some reason I recall avoiding them be all at the border of a neighboring town that didn't approve. I'm not so sure why I recall that, but I couldn't find anything online. So, all right, thanks. And I appreciate the motion, Councillor Allen.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. Councillor Gardner.
I vote yes.
Thank you. That carries. Next motion, Councillor Gardner. This one's yours. Further construction mitigation measures to help Highland Gate residents. Would you like to move your motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor would.
Thank you. Someone like to second that? Councillor Kim. Councillor Gardner, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. I'm going to read it. Whereas the geranium construction will likely continue for several years, and whereas it is appropriate and responsible to help area residents mitigate quality of life impacts, now therefore be it hereby resolved that Council direct that the following issues be immediately addressed by staff through mitigation measures by the town and the developer. The first one is dust clouds by sweeper trucks merely moving dust around, road cleaning trucks using minimal water that does nothing to improve roads and often leaves a mess of mud, loud banging of tailgates after truckloads are emptied, fast trucks moving that again swirl up the dust and cause noise, trucks of earth that are not covered sufficiently, safety measures in place when trucks are using streets, therefore hindering traffic and pedestrian movement, communication to residents before the fact on what is happening in their area, and any other measures suggested by staff and council on concerns received from residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I speak now?
Yeah.
I tried to send council some videos that were sent to me by residents, and unfortunately they were rejected. And I'm not sure why. But the two that were most interesting to me was a large flatbed truck filled with a heavy load of concrete infrastructure that was backing up into the development with no spotter. This is a dangerous situation. I don't know if the town would hold any liability on this, but certainly we need to speak to the developer about that. The other thing that I've seen is that in areas, well, this was on Murray, I think also in Brookland, where you have lines of trucks and they're trying to get into the development. We have our pedestrians, we have people driving, and there's no spotters around. There needs to be some kind of safety infrastructure in place when they're doing these large works that require a lot of trucks. The other thing, and it's just, I'm so sorry you can't see this, I've seen it in person. Sweeper trucks come by. They really don't do anything to clean the roads. They send up clouds of dust, and the dust moves all over the neighborhood. It coats cars and windows and everything else. And the residents are really furious, and I agree with them. And actually, we had some furious residents across from Library Square, and I believe we actually paid to wash their cars. I think that's been asked by the developer, by the residents of the developer. But in any case, it's just unacceptable. None of us live in this area, the area of the development. And I would really appreciate if council would go by and just have a quick look. This construction, I mean, I have spoken to Mr. Muno, this construction could last at least another few years, at least. I mean, we have to get all the way up to the apartment building or the condo, and there's lots of residents in that area. So I would really appreciate support on this from council. I know that we're going into a award system, but this was under our watch, the approval of this, and the developer in writing told the residents that they were going to do everything they could to make sure that this wasn't too intrusive, and that hasn't happened. And we haven't done anything to try and help. And it's time. There's hundreds of residents there. So that's all that I have to say about this. Mr. Mayor, before we call the vote, I need to ask you something.
Sure, go ahead.
No, it's at the end of the discussion, if there is any.
You have a question for me, or you just want to ask me
Actually,
something?
you know what? I can save it till after we're finished the motion. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gallo?
I have a question.
Sure.
First off, two things. Have you spoken to staff? I'm interested in hearing what the mitigation measures we can do beyond what I assume staff is already doing to a certain degree, or what's normal under construction projects, because it's fine to give them this direction, but I want to better understand what it is that they could do to solve this.
Do want me
Thank
to
you.
direct that- do
Well,
want me to direct that to Mr.
To
Romano?
whomever can answer.
to me or
Thank-
Mr. Mayor?
I think that'd be better. Mr. Romano, do you want to?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I've had discussion with Councillor Gardner, and what I can say is that staff from a number of different departments, are involved in the development around Highland Gate. So, and the developers being very responsive with respect to any issues that do come up. And there are days where we do get complaints. We act on those immediately. I'm involved. We've got our engineering staff that are out there working with the Geranium and their consultants. Again, there are issues that have come up with respect to dust and noise, et cetera, but we try and address those as soon as they come up. And I think just going down through the list, there are a number of these matters that I think we have addressed. I mean, with respect to ensuring that the waters are kept clean, the streets are kept clean, and the water trucks do have that proper balance of not too much water, but just enough water to ensure that the roads dust is kept down. Traffic, we've actually installed some traffic calming measures on one street in particular. Again, our engineering staff are out there on a regular basis, and even our bylaw enforcement staff are involved if there's construction activity that occurs after hours as per our bylaw, which occasionally does happen. So again, we work with the Geranium on a daily basis. I meet with them on a weekly basis, but we're trying to be as responsive as we can be whenever issues do arise.
Councilor Gallo?
Thank you. And it's good to hear. The reason I ask, what we're going to do is because this isn't the first time we've been hearing this. And I've been hearing it too many times, more so than any other development. And maybe it's the uniqueness of the development that you have to actually go in through other roads in order to accomplish it. Maybe it's a developer that isn't in tune with, doing work in neighborhoods like that. Whatever it is, I've heard this complaint far too many times, and action needs to be taken. And if we're doing something extra to mitigate this, then we should be charging them. It's not fair that the taxpayer have to pay for any extra work that the town is doing in order to make this a proper development. So if this accomplishes it, I'm in support of it. I want to be sure that we have some concrete measures to be able to deal with these.
Mr. Gilliland?
Thank you. Just some clarity through Mr. Mayor to, staff. The way the resolution is written, is it implied that staff would address, when it's saying staff would address through mitigation, that the town would actually perform some of the mitigation measures and then bill the developer should they not be doing it on their own accord? Is that kind of where we're going with this?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess I'll need clarification on that. I think what I can add is that whenever an issue does arise, we're having the developer address it immediately at no cost to the town.
Councilor?
Thank you. I guess for clarity, I think what Councillor Gartner's intention is, what Councillor Gallo is stating is as much as we're doing as we can, I think staff's already doing all these things. So just questioning the resolution, if we're trying to go above and beyond what the town's already doing as much as we can, what's that next step that the town can strengthen if we're already crossing our T's and dotting our I's and we're all doing your job? And I think you guys are doing your job. I know you guys are reaching out and having these conversations, and it's exhausting. And at what point do we say, well, you know what, we're trying to work with you. We've done the best we can, but now residents council's directions like, well, if you don't have it done in a timely manner, we've given you more, authority to perform these things on their task and then bill them for it. How we actually gauge that is a different thing. And when we get to that point, I don't know where that delegated authority falls in, but how could you, translate that?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, I'm not sure if I have an answer to that. Again, it's a question of what sort of direction I get from council. I think what I can say though is the majority of the heavy sort of servicing works, site works, it will be completed by October. West of Murray Drive, we've issued 100 building permits essentially for those first three phases, and so they're into the home construction phase. The site works with the heavy equipment is essentially finished in that area. There's some transporting of topsoil into the open space block. They'll have the trails and some of those playground shelters and benches done by this fall. They are doing the service site works, which requires the huge amount of dump trucks and some of the larger heavy equipment on the final 2 phases, which comprises about 60 homes east of Murray Street, those 2 streets. What I'm hearing is that they will be completed and those roads will be paved by the end of this year. And then what will remain will be the construction of those last 50, 60 homes east of Murray.
Counselor?
Thank you. I appreciate that update. So hopefully they keep to their word. I think a lot of the residents there feel like they've heard the same story that it's going to be done, and yet here we are. So I do hope it holds true. I guess my other question is maybe it's through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Gartner then. With the resolution before us, I feel like from what's being expressed by staff is that they were already kind of doing everything within respect to the ask here. And I'm just trying to understand, is there a specific direction here that's we're directing staff differently than they're already doing? And if so, please explain.
Councillor Gardner, I maybe you might want to point to H in your thing, which says any other measure suggested by staff, but I'll let you answer.
You know, I'm sitting here listening to this. I'm present a lot in this subdivision. And I'm going to say that the developer promised to clean the streets once a day. That is for sure not happening. And the cleaning that's being done is not only ineffectual, it's hurting the residents. I'm not suggesting that the town do any physical mitigation measures. I am suggesting that we are on top of the developer. I know they're a very big, powerful developer, but they have said that they're going to do their best to try not cause too much disruption within the existing residential area. And that hasn't happened from the beginning, and it's not happening now. And I don't know about the future, but I can tell you the roads are a mess. There's clouds of dust. The residents' windows and cars, they have to keep their windows closed spring, summer, and fall if the construction is in their area. This is not rocket science. The developer, I'm sure, knows how they can mitigate some of these things. Clean the streets properly. Make sure that those road cleaning trucks are out there every day. There's ways to put down mud mats to keep the mud from becoming a problem. People are tracking mud on their tires and into their cars. With respect to the banging of tailgates, some of the drivers are very careful and some just don't seem to care. That's us speaking to the developers, speaking to their contractors or their subcontractors to get this taken care of. And with respect to trucks, some of them move nice and slow, and some of them just don't care. And to me, this is a safety issue apart from anything else. If they're going to be starting work on the east side of Murray at some point, there's going to be a lot of truck traffic. We should make sure that there are people directing our residents who are driving so that they can proceed safely. I mean, the region is doing it on Henderson, and that's a much wider street. And the other thing, communications to residents. Tell the residents, I have a motion that was passed by council, tell the residents in advance what's going to be going on. Just don't let it happen. If they're not paving part of a road for a certain reason, explain it to the residents. Why should they have to come to staff or council? We should not be so, maybe you guys aren't in the mix, but I certainly shouldn't have to be so much in the mix. And I've been in the mix for a long time, not just because hopefully it'll be my ward. With respect to other measures suggested by staff and council, I think we need more oversight. We need more of our staff oversight. Going out once a week or here
Yep.
and there, it doesn't
Okay.
do it.
I get it. Okay, perfect. So what I got from that, if I may, Mr. Mayor, just generally commenting, is that you're looking for staff maybe to have more proactive approach. So through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Ramuno. So currently, is it more of a complaint-driven approach in regards to some of the issues that Councillor Gardner is bringing today? And a follow-up question to that would be, could we have a more proactive approach, whether it be on a weekly basis, just to ensure that they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's?
Ramono?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's a combination of both, but I mean, I'll certainly have a discussion with with staff and the builder developer tomorrow morning on some of these issues that have been raised here. But again, it's something that we obviously respond to complaints, but I'm out there quite a bit and my staff are out there every day. So if they see something, they address it on site. But again, I'll have a discussion tomorrow morning with the builder on some of these issues and where they can do better.
Councillor?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Councillor Gartner, then just kind of understanding where you're coming from, would, should this pass or whatnot, would it make sense to put in your resolution that proactive, I guess, approach? So I think that's kind of what you're looking for, versus just kind of like a general addressing and just be more proactive. And that way we know it's not really like to your point, why do residents have to go and make that step to staff versus the opposite way around? It's just a comment, and I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that.
Councillor Gardner? And just to clarify, I do believe, Mr. Ramono, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. I thought you answered that we do both. We already do proactive. Okay. Councillor Gardner?
Combination, but-
If I could just say, I think the word should be actions.
Okay. Councillor?
I mean, I don't know what more comments to put other than the fact that, staff have already demonstrated that they're doing all that they can do. It is a combined effort of proactive and complaint driven. So I support staff in their efforts. If, this motion is to go the above and beyond, I'm not really certain, other than kind of making a point that we all kind of agree that, collectively of a council, this is a problem over there. And it's really, the intention is to really send, I guess, more of a loud message to the developer to say, we've got our eyes on you. And that's really the intent here, to ensure they're pulling up their socks, because we identify that this is an issue. Like, I'm all for that. So I'm going to just pass the baton and hear what everybody else has to say in this regard.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, just in terms of clarifying, I guess, the limits of our authority, certainly, the issues around Highland Gate have been going on for a few years, and this conversation has come up on multiple occasions. And I hear you when you say that, the developer has been, responsive when complaints have been brought forward, but at the same time, it's a drain on staff and time and resources, and that is a cost. So, going back to what we can do, it's great to talk about all the mitigation measures, but when it goes beyond that and it's actually costing us time and money, can we impose a penalty? Can we bill them if necessary? If we have to send out a truck to water the streets or, resolve issues with dust and so forth, what can we do from a monetary perspective?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, under a subdivision agreement, there are a number of obligations that they have to follow with respect to keeping the streets clean, and we could charge them back. But quite frankly, we haven't come to that point yet, because whenever there has been an issue where we find a road perhaps needs to be cleaned, they send the truck out. So we have the ability through our subdivision agreement and other bylaws that are in place, obligations that they need to meet, like keeping the streets clean, etc. And again, we haven't had to use those triggers yet.
Well, then I think you need to put them on notice that they need to do more, quite simply. Otherwise, we will.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate the situation. I live quite close to there and I do drive through the mud and I have seen the truck trying to clean the road, but it is not easy. I've also think the biggest problem here is it's development within an area that had a very peaceful environment. So these individuals are in chaos right now. They used to have a peaceful golf course. Now they have havoc. So the backyards are a disaster, the roads are a disaster. So the reaction is absolutely what it should be. They're upset and I don't blame them. I go through there and I just, it's horrific, to be honest with you. So I know that, you know, the developers doing what they can. What I was wondering through Mr. Mayor, is there something that we can do instead of doing the one-ofs, can we have another sort of regroup with the developer? And look, say this is not your, obviously your typical subdivision, building a brand new area off to the side where they're all new houses and they're tolerating this. It's not, this is an existing established neighborhood over 40 years in most cases. That maybe there's a way that we can try to pay respect to sounds. One in particular, and I don't think you can get around with it because there's safety measures, but whenever the trucks back up, beep, 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 that's all they're hearing. That's all they're hearing. Beep, 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 beep. And then they hear the slams. So it's constant. It is what it is. I like what Mr. Ramuna mentioned. Hopefully the big truck work will be done by the end of October. So if they'll have a more peaceful summer and spring next year, they're going to hear hammering, but not these massive vehicles. So I don't know if there's, you know, as number H says, any other measures suggested by staff and council, if there's something like that. I just believe it's a unique build because it's not in a new area. So it's really a frustrating situation. So anything you can come up with from a staff perspective, if we could just make the developer really sensitive to how terrible it is for these poor residents, I'd appreciate anything that can be done for sure.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councilor Gallo, second.
Just the last comment, just based on everything I've heard so far. I think if we're getting the complaints that a street is dirty and then we call the developer and they go and clean it, that's an issue because if there's protocols in place for them to be doing it once a day, those streets should never be dirty other than during the day. But if you're doing it consistently, the homeowners are not stupid. They'd see it. They'd say it's dirty, but tonight they're going to come and they're going to clean it. And tomorrow morning it's, you know, might get dirty the next day, but it's consistent and it's done properly and you won't get those complaints. To me, picture that I see is that's not happening. It's being disregarded. It's only acted upon when complaints are happening and then it gets done, but that's not a proper process. More action needs to take place because it's within an established neighborhood, and that message needs to be clear to the developer. It's not sufficient what you're doing. And if what's before us is accomplishing that, then I'm all in support of that. But it seems to me that needs to happen. Those protocols need to be in place and consistent, and you'll get far less complaints from the residents.
Councilor Kim, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And certainly, you know, several years into the development, it is frustrating to hear residents' complaints. And, you know, we've heard them at council chambers. We've received dozens and dozens of emails. And I do agree with Councilor Gallo that, you know, with the supervisor or the lead contractor on site can be more proactive to prevent these situations from happening. You know, that would solve, you know, naturally everything. You know, unfortunately, you know, with these, you know, this is our first large infilled development, and you know, I hope staff, you know, Mr. Rumuno are writing good notes and have some kind of a playbook, because we're going to have other infill developments in Aurora, because we are pretty well built out. So I hope that we do use the valuable lessons and unfortunately the terrible experiences that we and residents are having. So thank you, Councillor Gardner, for bringing the motion, and I'll certainly be in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. I guess just a quick comment to some of the things that Councillor Kim was saying. I believe we passed a motion about lessons learned on the Highland Gate project. So that is something I think that we're all going to be paying attention to if we are faced with this again, because obviously we've had a lot of challenges with this development and the time and how long it's taken. So I just kind of want to draw some attention to that again, the proactive approach. And we are having this conversation about, you know, why are we waiting for the complaint to happen in order to facilitate the dirty road or whatever that challenge may be. So if this motion really is intended to become more proactive with the situation, then let's give staff that direction to say, no, we want you to be on them like a dog on a bone. And that's kind of like the place of where this is coming from, right? And, you know, hopefully, you know, the developer will pull up their socks and realize that we're sending that message that, you know, okay, enough's enough. And, but I do believe staff has been doing best they can through this process. I just want you to know that we do recognize that through this motion. Other than that, I think that, you know, things are moving along, and I'm glad to hear that by the fall, hopefully if all things can through for next fall, that this will be complete, the heavy work that you were saying. Is it this fall you're saying October? Okay, so hopefully at that point, it'll be finished and we won't be having these conversations like this again. Thanks.
Councillor Humphrey, second time.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick point. And I'm not sure if you are on the trucks are constantly cleaning the roads. It's just, I don't know if they can't keep up, or it's just not enough water, like the measurement of water with the sweeper, but it's constantly going, but it's just too much to handle with the narrow roadway and all the trucks. So I think it's just a really difficult situation. So to Councillor Kim's point, maybe the supervisor on site can try to organize how many go where when, because east and west off of Murray is where the development is really heavy right now. And it's a tough situation all around. But to Councillor Gilliland's point, you know, staff's done a lot of work. I know you react as much as possible and try to fix things, but you know, again, if we can, I don't want to be repetitive, but you know, anything else that we can do to the motion section letter H, that would be fantastic. Thanks.
Councillor Gardner, second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to everybody for the discussion. You know, nobody's asking anybody to go above and beyond. The residents are just asking for basic regard for their quality of life. And I'm going to read something that comes from SCS Consulting. Okay, this is a quote. A unique aspect of the development is its interface with more than 500 neighboring residential properties. This warranted an extensive consultation process with the neighboring property owners by providing appropriate buffers and mitigation measures. These efforts helped create a seamless transition between the existing mature community and the proposed infill development. That is a very interesting statement. And I would say, judging from what I've seen and the responses of the residents, it's not true. So I ask staff, or perhaps you, Mr. Mayor, or anybody on council, we need to be in touch with the developer and have them uphold. Can't see how it could be a seamless transition, but certainly a transition that is not causing the residents so much trouble, so much stress, so much extra work. I don't think I can possibly add anything more to this, except let's get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Counselor, I mean, I know you recall, and I would hate to say I told you so, but when we discussed this actual application, when it came in for development, this was the concern that I know that you shared it with me as well. And we talked about it. And that's why we put that motion forward together in regards to strengthening the construction mitigation plans and making sure that everyone has an understanding that this is a unique circumstance, that we do have an established neighborhood in this area, and it's different. I mean, when you drive through construction sites, you see everyone just going through. Subs are just doing what they want. They're playing music. I could tell you how many times I've been out to the Highland Gate development in regards to music that's blaring, that residents are listening to all day, and we're having to go out there, and I'm having to send out bylaw out there, and because they're not listening. And when we go out there, it goes away for about a week, but then a week later, it's back again. And so these are some of the things that happen in a regular subdivision construction project, but wouldn't be allowed within this type of one. And I think the problem is that they don't have that understanding, and we need to make them understand. And so I appreciate, Councillor Gardner, you bringing this forward. And Mr. Ramuno, if we have to, once again, we've done this many times with them, and I know you've called them and you've been very strong with them as well. But we need to relay that message, as Councillor Thompson mentioned, that if they're going to continue, and we're going to continue to have these types of complaints coming in, we're going to have to start either holding securities, or we're going to have to start issuing fines, or we're going to have to start going out and doing the job ourselves, and we're going to have to charge them back. And I think that they need to get that message loud and clear. We've said it many times, but we got to say this is the end of it. Like they need to get that message loud and clear. So thank you, Councillor Gardner.
If I could just add, Mr. Mayor, when we tried to put forward that motion to have it passed by council, we were told that we didn't need to put anything else in place, that everything was under control and it was covered. Well,
and I agree with him. That's why I said I don't want to say I told you so, but you and I, yes. So that's why we put that
well,
forward.
so thank you.
No, thank you. Council, I'll call the vote. Councilor Gardner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I ask my question?
Councilor Gardner?
Yes, the question I was going to ask. Is it possible that I missed the approval of section 9, which was any discussion of last GC's reports?
You must have missed. Yeah, we did standing committee reports. I asked if anyone wanted to pull any items. No one wanted to pull anything, and it got passed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought it was section 8 that we were passing.
That
So
is
I
the
guess-
standing committee report, section 8. Section 9 would be for items that we pull from section 8, and we didn't pull any.
Thank you. I was going on our 9.1 GC item from last week. I guess I'm on under new business again.
Okay, thank you. So we're on new business right now. So I'll start with you. How's that?
These would be questions to Mr. Muno, and I do thank Jason and Mr. Muno for their help. Mr. Muno, what is our sewage capacity now? We haven't had an update. It's actually exactly a year.
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe we have approximately 45,000 persons worth of sanitary servicing capacity remaining.
4,500?
Sorry,
Yeah, I was gonna say
40
45,000. I think you're wrong, Mr. Ramuno.
4,500, 4500.
Councilor Gardner?
Well, that's interesting because our report last year said we had just over 1,000 units left. So I appreciate you being in touch with me by email to tell me how you've come up with that number. And the reason I'm asking that is that the York-Durham sanitary sewer is basically stalled. They're waiting for an environmental assessment. And the province has put forward legislation that says, well, they're not really to do anything. It doesn't say that, I'm sorry, but it's a provincial legislation that basically puts everything on hold until this is settled. So we have no idea when the system is going to come online. And the report predicts I think it's 520 units per year to 2031. So according to your calculation, Mr. Bruno, we have enough sewage capacity to do 520 units per year.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, I referred to 4,500 persons, which is the equivalent of approximately 1,500 to 2,000 housing units, depending on the housing type. So that's around a 4 to 5 year supply. Long term, there will be a solution to the servicing for York Region. York Region completed the environmental assessment for the Upper York back in 2014 or 2015. It really has been awaiting regional or provincial approval. The province formed a task force last year. They've undertaken their meetings and will be reporting to the province in October, we hear. So we're expecting hopefully the province will have a decision on that EA, approve that EA sometime later on this year.
Counselor?
Okay, so I'm going to read something that I researched. The legislation, this is provincial legislation. It's called the York Region Wastewater Act. The legislation puts an indefinite hold on any decision by the Minister of the Environment, Conservation Parks on the Upper York Sewage Solutions Assessment. Prevents any further action from being taken by York Region to advance this project, and seeks to limit the province's liability for these steps. We have heard before at this table that the new environmental assessment could take many years and maybe go into 2030, 2031. So my concern is that perhaps the information on the CBC, oh, by the way, for the residents listening, that's the community benefits charge. It's really important because we had some of our capability for charging development charges. We had that taken away by the province, and now we've been given this opportunity to pick up some of the money. So I'm really worried that what the estimates are in this report won't come forward, and the whole report is based on that. With respect to the GO station, Mr. Mayor, we did talk about this, I'm not clear. It is not discussed in the report we had at the GC. It's not discussed as an intensification area, and it's not included in the number of intensification units that are going to be under the CBC. So under the CBC bylaw. So what is happening with the GO station?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the GO station is within our Promenade Secondary Plan area, which is the town's intensification area, where we're directing our majority of our higher density growth, our mid-rise buildings, the Yonge Street Wellington corridor. As part of this new official plan update, the draft goes one step further, identifies a portion of that GO station area as a major transit station area, which should take higher densities as per the provincial mandate in the regional plan. But again, the designations and the height permissions in our official plan, the draft official plan, as per council direction, are similar to the 2020 plan. So yeah, the majority of our apartment building developments will occur along that Yonge Street Wellington corridor, and particularly within that major transit station area, which is really, the area around the GO station, a little further east and north and south of Wellington. So again, that will accommodate the majority of our sort of higher density forms of residential development. With respect to that community benefits charge bylaw, it does speak to, as a consultant mentioned last week, that anything anything over 5 stories, and I believe it was 10 units, is eligible. We're eligible then to apply that CBC charge to that. And as council is aware, the majority of the development occurring in that area, it will be over 5 stories, ranging from 5, 6, in some areas, 7 stories. So we will be eligible to apply that charge. And I think that's, we heard last week why it's important to get that bylaw passed, to have that provision in place.
So we will, so thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So we won't be expecting buildings over 5 stories in the area of the GO station?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, the height permissions within that area range from 5 to 7. Cap of maximum height of 7, so from 5 to 7.
Counselor?
So why wouldn't we be charging CBCs on them?
Mr. Romano, I believe we charge CBCs if it's over
We will
5
be.
story, 5 and above, and more than 10 units, Counselor.
The report says that 70 of the intensification units allowed that we discussed last week, 75% are in the promenade area and 25% along Bayview. So we haven't included anything by the GO station. So it's contradictory information. Perhaps you could clarify it, Mr. Romano.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think what the report refers to is 75%. The majority of our intensification will occur within the promenade area, which includes major transit station area, the GO station area, which is part of the promenade. So I think they just use that generic, promenade area
Counselor?
as a reference.
And we consider the GO station to be in the promenade area. That's a question.
Yes, yes.
Counsel- I mean,
Thank you. Thank you.
Counselor?
This is a town-wide bylaw, and we have from the province very clear direction on where we're supposed to intensify. So why would we make it a town-wide bylaw? Are we going to expect to be intensifying in other areas of the town?
Ms. Mayor Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we made it a townwide bylaw because it would only apply to the developments that would be eligible, and then that would come down to the planning documents that would come forward. So we're not going to go and build a 5-story, 10-unit building in the middle of a residential neighborhood with detached houses. So,
Or in the middle of the Oak Ridges, or is that, can you also say, or in the middle of the Oak Ridges Marine?
Ms. Mayor Van Kessel?
through
I
you,
don't think
Mr.
Ms.
Mayor,
Van
yes.
Kessel can answer that, but in any environmental areas, we'll be building greater than 5-story buildings in any environmental areas. Perhaps to Mr. Muno.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I mean, the first document that we need to look at, or any developer, is our official plan. So that directs where the growth is going to occur, and there will be no growth in our Oak Ridges Marine area under OP 48. That's non-settlement. So the leading document will be council's approved official plan that directs the growth, particularly in our promenade, which again, just to clarify, includes the Young Wellington corridor and the major transit station area around the GO station.
Thank
Counselor?
you. Can you clarify the CBC money for capital projects? It is mentioned in the reports, something about municipal parking services, talking about gates, etc. Are we thinking of using this money to provide paid parking facilities?
Ms. Mayor Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this would be done through the budget process, and that is speaking to the things that it is eligible to be used for. But it is also eligible to be used for things like cultural projects as well, which currently DCs cannot be applied to.
Counselor?
Culture and public art. I'd like to ensure that we use this money to keep our residents' taxes lower, residents and businesses. There's also, this is very concerning to me, in the in-kind contributions. This means that we can get services or something, a capital project instead of money. At the moment in this bylaw, this is at the discretion of staff. I would like to see that anything that's cash in lieu of money come to council for a decision. Is that possible?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that would come through as part of the planning applications.
Councillor.
From the list in the report, I'm not sure that it would. So could you check on that, please?
I see a head nodding.
Thank you so much. And my last comment, there's two. There was a public open house. The public open house is supposed to serve the development community and any interested members of the public. It was held in the middle of August, which we know is terrible time to get feedback from residents. And from what I can tell, there weren't residents there. It was mostly attended by the development community. I'm just very unhappy that we didn't give the public a fulsome chance to weigh in on this, apart from the GC meeting last week and this week. There is one more thing. Also there's an online platform. I don't know who would speak to that. There's an online platform for people to weigh in on. Did we ever get any comments on that?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did not receive comments through the online platform. And for the public session that was held, we did notify the development community, including Build. There were a couple of residents that did show up but once they realized the CPC really didn't affect them, that it was more a development issue, they left.
Councillor.
Thank you. I would say that the collection of CBC funds, which would replace DCs that we were able to get before, that would keep our taxes down, I would think it would be of great interest to the public. But there it is. And the last thing is, this is a really important report. It's, I don't know how many pages, at least 50, with complex issues. And we're getting it at the last minute. We got it at the last minute. We have to decide now. In this last council meeting, I know that other members of council have spoken to this before, as have I. These very important reports shouldn't be coming with such a time constraint. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business, Councillor Garner?
I think that's enough, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland, new business?
Thank you. Just a quick question in regards to the last motion pass. I'd spoken twice, so I just wanted some clarity. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, with the resolution that was passed, I know that we had some words that were said around the table, a few of us, about whether or not, if it doesn't get resolved, do we start doing the work and charging the developer to actually act upon properly? So does staff have this delegated authority already to get to that point that you would be able to make that decision and proactively clean the streets, for lack of a better term, as an example, now, or does that require a motion?
Mr. Ramuno?
Mr. Mayor, no, we have that ability now through our subdivision agreement. Staff can act on some of those provisions if need be.
Councillor?
Perfect. That was the only clarity I wanted. Thank you.
Councillor Humphreys? Councillor Kim? Councillor Thompson? Councillor Gallo?
Not new business, but I think this is the last time we'll be sitting. So I just wanted to wish everyone the best of luck during the next municipal election. And I'm very happy to see a lot of quality candidates, apart from us, that have put their name forward. It's inspiring to see.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Yeah, I was going to wish all of you sitting here good luck. in the upcoming election. Obviously, we won't be meeting, as Councilor Yellen mentioned, until after the election. We have one more council meeting. So with that, we'll move to bylaws. Someone like to move the bylaws? Councilor Thompson, second. Councilor Kim. Comments or questions on the bylaws? Call a vote. Councilor Gardner?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That carries. Confirming bylaw. Councilor Thompson, Councilor Kim, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councilor Kim, Councilor Gallo, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. It was 3, it was.